Hey guys, Steve here from Restalgia, putting a video together to go through some of the frequently asked questions that I've been getting on my BleemSync 1.0 installation video. There's going to be a few things that we want to talk about. The first thing that I'm going to go over is how to change the background music in the boot menu loading screen. The next thing that we're going to talk about is changing the background of the boot menu. Third, we're going to talk about adding and changing themes for our BleemSync interface. The fourth thing that we're going to talk about is how to add multi-bin games or multi-disc games. So there's some games, even though they were single disc, that they have multiple bin files. And then, of course, with multi-disc games, I'm going to show you guys how to add those. I'm also going to show you guys how to change or put in custom cover art for any games that you guys currently want to put in there. So if you don't like the stock cover art or you have some custom cover art that you want to include for a specific game, I will show you quickly how to do that. I'm also going to show you guys how to set a few settings in the back end of the BleemSync UI, which will include things like how to switch between using the built-in emulator for BleemSync and allowing all your PlayStation games to run through the emulators on RetroArch. And I'm also going to show you guys how to hide the stock PlayStation Classic games from the BleemSync menu. So a lot of people have said, you know, I don't want any of the games that were originally installed on the console to display in my BleemSync build. How do I get rid of them? And I'll show you guys it's actually really quick and simple. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys really quickly how to change the background music and how to change the background of the boot menu. So what we're going to need to do is make sure that our PlayStation Classic is turned off. We're going to take our USB drive out of our PlayStation Classic and we're going to plug it directly into our computer. Now I've already done that, so I'm going to go ahead and source my USB, which is right over here. I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to actually make this full screen so you guys can see. So what we need to do is we need to double click on our BleemSync folder. And then there's going to be an ETC folder. We need to double click on that. And then again, there's going to be another BleemSync folder within that. We're going to double click on this again. And then now in here, we've got a lot of our folders. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is our background music. So we need to go to our SND, which would be short for sound. We're going to double click on that. And in here, you're going to see that we've got our boot menu music that's sitting there. And it is currently a WAV file. So if I double click on this, so what we would need to do here is we would need to source another WAV file, and it must be a WAV file, and it would need to be labeled as boot menu. So what we want to do is we'd find the file that we want, make sure it's in WAV format, we'd rename it as boot menu. It's probably a good idea to take this file and save it somewhere on your desktop, just in case you ever want to go back to it. But then you would pull this file off and replace it with the new music file that you want. Once you've done that, when you turn your console back on, it should play the new music in the boot menu. The next thing that we're going to talk about is how to change the background of your boot menu. So we're going to go all the way back. Again, I'm going to show you as if you're opening up your USB drive. You'll double click on BleemSync. You'll double click on ETC. You will double click on BleemSync again. And you will go down to IMG. So in here, you're going to have all of your images. You've got a splash screen image, and that's going to be what displays on the screen prior to loading up your boot menu. And then this is the one that you're going to want to change, this background. So if we open up this background, that's what it is. So we've got our boot menu up top, we've got the Mod My Classic logo on the bottom, and then the Mod My Classic webpage on the bottom right corner here. What we want to do is we need to make sure that we are replacing it with the same size PNG. PNG is the only file that will work. I did test to see if we could put in a JPEG and it does not work, so it must be in PNG format. And the dimensions that you want to work with are going to be in pixels, so it needs to be 1280 across by 720 high. So again, 1280 across by 720 high. So whatever image you want to use in place of the existing boot menu image, just make sure that you've got it set to the correct size. And if you're making a custom one, that's easy. If not, you'll have to open it up in either MS Paint or Photoshop or some sort of photo editing software, and you'll need to resize the image. But then again, you would do the same thing. You're going to relabel that as background. You'll likely want to save this background image somewhere on your computer just in case you ever want to revert back to it. But you would remove this from this folder and you would load the new image in here. Again, making sure that you keep the name the same as it currently is here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the theme, or we're going to add some themes to this. So again, we're going to go back to our root of our drive. So we're going to double click on BleemSync. We're going to go to etc again, BleemSync again, and then on the bottom you're going to see a folder called theme. If we double click on this, you'll see right in here there's the Mod My Classic theme that's already pre-installed. What we're going to want to do is we're going to just load our theme into here as well. So I have my Metal Gear Solid theme on my desktop and I've labeled the folder MGS. And this is going to be important for later, so that way we can tell the BleemSync software what folder to look in to pick our theme. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and drag this folder directly into my themes folder on my USB drive. Perfect. And now we've got everything loaded. We are going to have to make some changes in the back end of the BleemSync web app in order to activate that theme, but I'll show you guys how to do that. In terms of the background music and the background of the boot menu, you don't need to do anything else further. As soon as you plug your USB drive into your PlayStation Classic, it will load up both the new music and the new background right away. So the next thing that we have to do now is I've got to unplug my USB drive from my computer and plug it into my PlayStation Classic. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. Okay guys, so I've unplugged my USB drive, I've plugged it into my PlayStation Classic, and I've turned on my PlayStation Classic and it's currently sitting on the boot menu. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up my web browser and we are going to go to the BleemSync UI web app. And now it's just going to connect in, and as you can see here, I've got my 4 games that I've previously loaded in my previous video. So what we want to do to activate our theme is we need to go over to our PlayStation Classic options here, and then we need to go to our BleemSync preferences. So we're going to go ahead and click on BleemSync preferences. Okay, so now we're going to scroll down, and what we're going to look for is the theme name. So right away we know that our theme location for the location of the UI themes is set as BleemSync/theme, so it's in the correct folder. Now we just have to tell the UI which theme we want to select. So the theme name, we just need to change it to the name of the folder in which we just put in. So I'm using an MGS as Metal Gear Solid theme. So I just need to type in MGS and then I need to hit save. So now what you're required to do, as you can see on the bottom, once you make any changes in the back end here, you have to reboot your system before it will work. Now I will go ahead and make some changes here, and I will show you guys those when we're done with all these changes, and we'll switch over to the PlayStation Classic so you guys can see those. But before we do that, there's a few other changes and things that I wanted to show you guys in terms of customizing in the back-end menu. So like I had mentioned, there is a couple different things that we can do here. So some people were asking me about the built-in emulator for BleemSync, or for the PlayStation Classic, and how you could get your PlayStation Classic games to run directly through RetroArch while still being within the BleemSync carousel. And there's just a little option up here. Okay, so our option is right here. It says, if true, then RetroArch is the emulator for stock UI. Now, it's important to note that save states are not compatible between different emulator versions. So you won't be able to use the save states the way that it's built in by pressing the reset button for the BleemSync UI if you do have this checked. So just be aware that that is the case. I'm going to check it just so that way I can show you guys that it does work that way. The next thing that people were asking me about is how do we get rid of the built-in PlayStation Classic games? So I don't want to see the PlayStation Classic games that were pre-installed on the console on my build. How do I get rid of those? And it's right over here. If true, dynamically links eMMC games on top of USB games. So what that's going to do is it's going to take the games that are pre-built on the console and it's going to load them over top of your USB games. If we uncheck that, that will remove those games and they will no longer display on our BleemSync build. The next thing that we can do here is we can enable a quick boot. So what that's going to do is it's going to get rid of the Sony splash animation. I personally like it, but again, for the purposes of this video, I'll go ahead and check it so that way you guys will see that it does not appear when I reboot my system and I switch over to it. I'm also going to go ahead and disable the health warnings. So that is automatically there, but what we're going to do is we're going to remove that so it no longer displays it. It goes directly from our boot menu directly into the carousel. The next thing that we could choose is we can boot directly into the stock UI, which would be our BleemSync, or we can boot directly into RetroArch. For the purposes of this, I want access to my boot menu, so I'm not going to make those changes. But if you want to boot directly into RetroArch because you don't ever plan on using the BleemSync carousel, what you would do is you would just check this off and uncheck the boots directly to the boot menu selector. Only one of these three can be checked at the same or at any given time. If you've got two checked, you're not going to get the desired result. But for me, I'm going to keep my boot menu selector. So now that we've made all the changes in the BleemSync preferences that we like, we have to go ahead and save our work, and we're going to scroll down to the bottom and we're going to save it right over here. So we're going to hit save. It is going to save all of our settings. We're going to scroll down again, and I just want to remind you guys that once you've made these changes, if you were to take your controller and jump into BleemSync, none of them will be there. The changes won't actually be active until you've done a full reboot of your system. So next I wanted to talk to you guys about how to add multi-bin or multi-disc games. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to jump over to our game section, and we're going to click on Manage. So we're going to add a new game, and we're going to choose the game file. So I need to just select a game that I know has more than one disc. So let's select Resident Evil 2. So we can see in here I've got Resident Evil 2 CD1 with a Q and CD2. So what we need to do in order for this to work, we just have to select all 4 items, both bin files and both Q files, and we're going to hit open. What it's going to do is it's automatically going to source our artwork, and it's also going to pre-populate all the information like we would expect. While we're doing this, what we can do is we can also change the artwork. So if you have custom artwork, you can add this here. What you need to do is you need to find whatever artwork you want, make sure it is in PNG format, and I've got one right here. Now this is just the Bloody Roar 2 artwork, but I will show you how this works. So I'm just going to click on it and drag it over top, and it will just replace the file that's there. Now if we were to add the game, it would automatically add the game with this artwork. So if you have custom artwork, all you have to do is make sure that it's ready to go, load your game on first you choose your files, then you just click and drag it over top of the existing artwork that it scrapes for you, and you'll get that new artwork. Now I don't want Bloody Roar 2 artwork on top of my Resident Evil, so what I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to jump over here, and then I'm going to reselect those files. So if I go ahead here, it should pop out, and then now we've got our Resident Evil 2 artwork, and I'm going to go ahead and add this game really quickly. Now I'm going to fast forward because it's a multi-disc game. It's going to take a little while to load up, but I'm going to fast forward now. Okay, perfect. So now I'm just going to reorganize it, and I'm going to stick it at the end because it is in alphabetical order here. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a game that has multiple bin files, even though it's a single disk. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new game. I'm going to choose the file, and one I know for sure that is like that is my Rayman game. So as you can see here, I've got track 1, and it goes down to like 51 tracks. So the way that we know this is going to work is if I were to just try to select my my bin and queue for track 1 and open it, it's likely not going to work. Yeah, it says not all binary files were selected, or they are misnamed. And the reason for that is because the queue file is pointing to multiple tracks. So we need to include everything. So we're just going to go ahead and select all the files. We're going to hit open. And as you can see here, it's got all of our files here. We've got 52 files, including the queue. So we've got 51 bin files and 1 queue. And you can see the artwork that it's scraped here. This is a good example of replacing the artwork. It's scraped the artwork for the UK version. What I want is my US artwork. So I need to go ahead and go back into my drive where I had all of my games, because I've already pre-downloaded all of the artwork files, and I just need to find it. There it is, game data, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my PNG file. I'm going to click on it, drag it over, and it's going to be there now. So I've clicked on my artwork, I've dragged it over, it's replaced the existing one, and now I'm going to add this, and I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this as well. Okay, excellent. So now that the game has been added, again, I'm just going to resort it so that way it's in alphabetical order. But that's it. So now if you click on Rayman, it's got the proper artwork. If you check Resident Evil 2, it's in there as well. So the next step, of course, would be that we need to do a full reboot on our system to get our theme up and running properly and to make sure that everything is running well. The other option clearly that we've selected is that we are going to run the RetroArch emulator for all of our BleemSync UI games, so I will show you guys that in a second. Okay, so that's pretty much it then. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to reboot my system, and I'm going to switch over to it as well so you guys can see the whole loading sequence. Okay, so as you can see, it skipped the PlayStation Classic animation already, and it's going to jump right into our boot menu. And as you can see, I didn't change the background or change the audio, which you guys can hear in the background now. But if you had made those changes, they'd be visible and you'd be able to hear that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to BleemSync, and I'm going to just jump into it so I can show you guys the theme that's active. And you can also see that the health and safety warnings is now gone. You didn't have to visually see that anymore. And you can also see that the built-in games are no longer showing. And the only games that are currently showing are the 5 games that I've got loaded up on my PlayStation Classic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into one of the games to show you that it's no longer going to load the stock emulator. It is going to load the RetroArch emulator. So let's jump into Castlevania. So right away, we're going to notice it did take a little bit longer to load our game, but that's totally fine. And we're also going to see that it didn't really appear to look any different than if we were to run it through the BleemSync built-in emulator or through the PlayStation Classic built-in emulator. But if we press Start and Select at the same time, we will actually be able to access our RetroArch quick menu. So we've got access to everything here. This would be a workaround for those of people who are looking to play games like Ape Escape. If you plug in a PS4 controller into your PlayStation Classic, it will operate properly on RetroArch. So if you've got a game like Ape Escape and you want to play it and you want it to be displayed on your BleemSync UI, you'd want to turn this feature on so that way the game automatically loads through RetroArch and you can actually use your analogs as long as you've mapped them properly to play that game. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If I close the content, it's going to take us right on back to RetroArch. So that's the only downside to this right now, is that when you back out of the game, if you've loaded it through RetroArch, it will take you back to RetroArch. It does not take you back to your BleemSync UI carousel. But if we want to go back, we just have to quit RetroArch, and then it'll pop us over to our carousel here. So that is not ideal. Ideally, you would want, if you started up in the BleemSync UI and if you exited your game, you'd want it to bring you back. But what it does is it takes you to the RetroArch menu. Once you exit RetroArch, it'll kick you right on back to your BleemSync carousel. So that's pretty much it for the frequently asked questions. As I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen, there was a video that was put out by Patton Plays regarding some of the back-end concerns that were happening with BleemSync 1.0 between the developers. Now, I'm not going to go into detail. I'm going to link to Patton Plays video in the description, but there was also a video that was put out by DoctorDalek regarding, I guess, in response to Patton Plays video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave both links in the description. I think Patton has a ton of points that are very valid and his feelings are very good. So I would suggest not giving him any hard time about not putting out a 1.0 release video, because everything that he's saying makes total sense, especially if it doesn't kind of go with what he believes in terms of his own personal beliefs. So definitely he has rhyme and reason to feel the way that he does. I'm also, as I said, I'm going to leave the link to Dr. Dalek's response video, and that way you guys can actually hear directly directly from the lead developer kind of what the situation was, and he can better explain to you exactly what has been happening over the past couple of weeks and what you can expect from BleemSync in the future. One of the good things that I think that they're doing is they are no longer going to be putting deadlines, because I'm sure, as you guys all know, with deadlines, you tend to rush things when you're getting close to the deadline. If it's not ready, you just kind of piece it together to kind of get it out to the public as quickly as possible. And I think that's part of the reason why we ended up with the public beta, is because there was so much hype and so much anticipation. They didn't want to let you guys down, and the developers have been putting in a stupid amount of time. They have spent many nights, late into the nights, sometimes getting very little sleep, trying to develop and create this build for us. So I'm very thankful to them, and they've all done a fantastic job. But I certainly agree with the idea of removing deadlines, because now they can actually work at this on their own pace and really put out products as they feel when it's ready for the public to start using. So I definitely understand what they're doing and where they're coming from, and I give them a big kudos and thumbs up, because what they've done for us is absolutely incredible so far. So that's pretty much all I've got to say about that. Be sure to check the description so you guys can get those links and you can watch those videos and make up your own mind about kind of what was going on there. But other than that, thank you guys very much for watching. I really appreciate all the support. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up on the video. Share the video if you think this is going to be useful to any of your friends who have a PlayStation Classic. And I'll talk to you guys again real soon.